When I was first asked to give a sermon today, long before I knew what the theme was supposed to be, I knew I could not stand up at the front of a church and not talk about my mother. She was a deacon in the Episcopal Church, and I spent countless Sunday mornings in the congregation hearing her belt it out in the choir and then give sermons and readings from the pulpit in her black clerical robes. She had dreamed of being a reverend of her own congregation, but as an eccentric, unapologetic, chain-smoking, weird, and wise woman, let's just say the Episcopal bishops were less than willing to let her take the reins, and they never gave her the chance. They didn't believe that her calling was real, but I did. She was obviously very religious, but she was also a spiritualist and was never pushy about her religion on other people. When we would come home from church, she would ask me, "What'd you think about the sermon?" Being a little kid, I didn't always have too much feedback for her. But she would go to the bookshelf and she would pull out all the different religious books anyway. The Bible, the Torah, the Quran, the Bhagavad Gita, the Tripitaka, the Tao Te Ching, and she would open them all up, pointing excitedly to different pages in each book, saying, they're all teaching the same lessons. They're all telling the same stories, they just changed the names. Pick the one you like the best, because all they're really saying is be kind, be love, and take care of each other. And when I returned from the first day of kindergarten telling her, "Mama, kindergarten is boring," she immediately said to me, "If you're bored, you're not trying hard enough. Do it because you can, and not because anyone is going to make you." And I have lived by that principle ever since. If I am able, I do it, simply because I can. And she showed me that I really can do so much. And if you read my bio, you know that I have. But it's because of her influence that I'm even standing up here today. At 12 years old, she encouraged me to attend an open mic night with her and read some of my poems to a room full of adults. I was terrified. My paper in my hand was like this the whole time. And I was like, "Mom, oh my God, I'm so nervous." And she looked me right in the eye and she said, "The only difference between nervousness and excitement is fear. And when you're up on a stage, there is nothing to be afraid of and every reason to be excited." And I flipped the script. I flipped it in my head, and I have been addicted to the rush of performing ever since. But it's not just a high, it's how I survive. Being up on a stage and reading poems or singing songs, playing instruments, telling stories, or giving speeches allows me to channel the energy of the universe and send it out to each individual audience member, restoring their connection, plugging them back in. And they return the favor, copious amounts of energy coming right back at me. And it not only fills my cup, it refills my cup and gives me a whole other cup and fills that one too. One of my all-time favorite poets, Sonia Renee Taylor, once told me, when I asked her how she could continue to fight for radical justice every single day, and she said, "I only give from my overflow." Think about that. I only give from my overflow. Do any of you feel like your cup is just beyond empty these days? When looking at this ever-daunting task of healing the world, taking care of everyone else, and somehow finding time for your own passions? Imagine if you were somehow full enough to have overflow and to only give from that. What would it take for you to replenish your cup enough to have anything extra to give from at the end of the day? And that's why I wanted to give this talk, to inspire all of you to make your own cup a priority, to challenge you all to fill yourselves up and find something that gives you a whole other cup so you can use that to pour for others. It's certainly not an easy thing to do. I'm not trying to say that. It's definitely not something that our society leaves room for in our daily lives. Every single minute, it's just go, 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 go. And as my bandmate, Alex Mead, says, don't just go, 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 and never give yourself a break. Don't get fooled into feeling that money is the most important thing you can make, because it's really not. There's something so much more powerful we can make. A connection, a difference, a change. The story of how I came to embrace giving from my overflow and using my curiosity to heal the world goes way back to when I was just 18 years old and going away to college for the first time. My mom helped me to get a creative writing scholarship to the college that I went to, called Warren Wilson College in Asheville, North Carolina. And I thought I was going to be a creative writing major and be a slam poet and tour the country and sell like sold out stadium seats as a poet. That was my plan. That's what I was going to do. And I got to this school and I was there for freshman orientation and looked at the course catalog and realized they didn't have a creative writing major. They only had an English lit major. And I knew I did not want to be an English professor. I was like, what am I supposed to do now? So I started looking through the course catalog, and I saw that they had an entire book arts department to learn how to do papermaking and bookbinding. I was like, that's cool as heck. I want to do that. I didn't even know you could take classes in that. So I went and met with the teacher, and I signed up for as many of them as I could get into as an undeclared freshman. And at the end of that year, after taking those classes and realizing so obviously that I had definitely done that in a past life, I met with my advisor and I said, hey man, these are all the classes I took. What major am I working toward? He says, those are all elective, so nothing. Right? And I was like, I'm here on a scholarship. I can't do 5 years. This is back in the day when you couldn't get unlimited student loans. What am I supposed to do now? And he asked me one question that changed my whole life. He said, what do you want to do? Like, well, I want to be an artist and I don't want to be broke. How do I do that? He said, you should do that as your major. And I took his advice. I majored in integrative studies and I made up my own major because, as he said, do you know how rare it is to be 19 years old and know what you want to do for your whole life? You should do that. Spend the rest of your time here figuring out how to do what you want to do because you're in the right place to do that. And so, long story short, I made up my own major where I took entrepreneurial business and creative art and I put them together. And a big part of why I decided to do this major was not only because my mom was also a paper crafter and had always done rubber stamp collages and screen printing, and she actually did the church newsletter and would have her own little like photocopied cutouts of clip art and things that she would stick on and make photocopies. And so I just had grown up doing that, and it felt like so special and natural for me to keep doing that out into the world. But when I was a junior, I ended up, like 3 weeks into the school year, I was sitting on the porch of my dorm, and I remember thinking about a line from the great Leonard Cohen, where he says, there's a crack in everything, and that's how the light gets in. And my time in college cracked me open like an egg chalked off an overpass. And sitting there on the porch of my dorm on a Friday the 13th, all of a sudden, I'm sitting on a porch swing, and all of a sudden, like this crazy energy just took over all around me, and like all of my hair stood up. I had goosebumps on my face. It was intense, and I kept hearing in my head this word, tremendous, tremendous, tremendous. And I'm sitting there, and I'm trying to take as many deep breaths as I could and hold on to this energy. And as my, having a spiritualist for a mom who was, this far left of woo-woo, I grew up with a lot of, weird stuff. that happened to me, and kind of mythological stories that were handed down through my family. And this was one of the first times that I had personally been like, I am connected to something else. And I just kept feeling that all of it was just tremendous. And I ran around the porch of my dorm, and there were lots of other people sitting out there. It was about 11:30 at night, and I ran around and I told all the other people sitting on the porch, I'm like, oh, there's something wild out right now. There is some tremendous energy, and you need to take as many deep breaths as you can and hold on to it, because I don't think that it's going to be as strong as it is for very long. And some of the people were like, yeah, whatever, crazy girl. And some of the people, because I went to hippie school, were like, okay, I'll get on board, I'll do this. And we all kind of collectively harnessed this energy. And about 10 minutes later, the sky opened up and it started pouring, which was a huge deal because this is September in the mountains in fire season. And there are about 700 acres on fire near where we went to school, plus there were wildfires all across the country. And as it started raining, first we ran around and said, yay, it's raining, and then we were all getting wet, so we went to sleep. And I woke up to my phone ringing at about 4 o'clock in the morning, and I picked it up, and I heard my brother on the other end of the phone, and before he said anything, I said, I know. She's not there with you because she's here with me. She's making it rain. She's putting out those fires. And like thinking about her being up on this pulpit and having that calling and being called to do this, to pull from the universe and give it to people. I was like, if that's not being connected to whatever's up there, I don't know what is. And having her die on Friday the 13th was really just one of those things that I was like, who's making a movie about my life right now? But I really started thinking a lot about how short life is, but also how connected we are to each other. And that whole time in my life was very difficult. She didn't have a will, and I was going to school 1,000 miles away from home, and she had a house that was falling apart, and I was getting summoned to housing court for not mowing my grass in February, and I took the Greyhound bus back and forth to meet with lawyers and go to court multiple times to try to figure out how to keep our house and still go to school and somehow continue to get good grades and complete this major that was everything I dreamed of my whole life. And I went home for the winter break a few months later, sort of got my ducks in a row, and set back to school for the January semester. And I was like, okay, I think I kind of got a handle on this grief thing. I'm going to seize the moment and start everything new right now. And I got back to school and went to sleep. And I woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning to the fire alarm. And climbed down out of my loft, put on my parka because it was winter, go out into the hallway thinking, who's setting off the smoke detector in the party dorm now? It's cold, it's late, I don't want to go outside right now. And someone comes running down the hallway and says, it's a real fire, you want to get out of here. And I'm like, what are you talking, it's a real fire? That doesn't happen. I walked out onto the porch, the same porch where I had sat there with all my hair standing on end just 4 months earlier. And I looked across the courtyard, and one corner of the dorm where the trash shed was to the sky on fire. Like you could not see the top of it. And I was like, well, they better get over here. They better send the fire trucks over here and put this out. It's going to come over here and burn my stuff. Did not occur to me at all how fast a fire can burn. And we stood in the road and we watched pieces of the roof fly off. And within 4 hours, this building was to the ground. And once the pieces of the roof started flying off and coming towards where we were standing, and there was smoke all over the place, all the RAs and RDs ushered us out of the road into one of the other dorms. And two of our friends, we hadn't been able to find them. And we were watching the roof over the section where they were sleeping burn from the window of the other dorm. And I remember standing at the end of that hallway, looking out the window, watching that fire over their heads. And I said, I don't know if there's some dude in robes in the sky, but my mom is out there. I know she's out there. And I said, make sure everyone gets out alive. And immediately, all my hair stood up on end, had goosebumps on my face, same thing all over again. I turned around in the hallway and our friends were right behind us. And as soon as I turned back around after hugging them and screaming and jumping up and down, there was a whole bunch of people who all started running along the side of the dorm in the woods. And we could see them out the window. And there was some kind of commotion happening. And apparently, right then, a girl had jumped out of her window from the second floor. She was the only person injured in the fire, but she lived, even though she jumped headfirst out of her window from the second floor. And even though I didn't get a chance that day to talk to that girl, I knew that my mom had woken her up. I just knew it. And then I looked at the calendar, and it was her birthday. All my stuff burnt in a fire on her birthday. She would have been 55. And 5 has always been my lucky number, so I was like, well, that's 2 lucky things for me. I got to figure out what those 2 lucky things are. One was really obvious. Me and everyone else that was in that fire got out alive. That was easy. But the second thing was tricky. And I kept thinking about, like, what am I supposed to learn from this? I don't want to be one of those everything happens for a reason people, because some things just suck. And there, like, I think there's something to be learned from everything that happens to you, but not everything happens for a reason. So I kept thinking, what she didn't have this happen to me on her birthday because she wanted me to notice something. She's trying to tell me something. And I kept thinking about it. And the first day, I couldn't figure it out. And the second day, I couldn't figure it out. And the third day, they always say on the third day, that's when the weird stuff happens, right? On the third day, I looked at my roommate and it hit me. I was like, dude, all of our stuff burned up. We have no stuff, and it doesn't matter. Your stuff doesn't matter. You can always get more stuff. It doesn't signify how successful you are as a person. Maybe it's not about that. And my mom, she was a hoarder. And it's interesting that you talk about cleaning out your parents' house, because my brother still lives in that house and it's still full of stuff. And I just remember thinking, she's trying to teach me something she didn't learn in this life, that when you have all of those things around you, things you might need someday, you don't really need those things. And you might not have a someday. And a lot of times, the pursuit of things, the collection of things, are what keep you further and further away from other people. And for her collection of things made it so she couldn't have people over in her house. She couldn't cook dinner for people. She couldn't celebrate the way I know she wanted to. And all of a sudden, it was like the door was open in my connection to whatever's up there. And I was like, oh, it's not about that. And I immediately went into the art studio and I started creating all of this art about grief and about trauma and coming back to life and being connected to the universe, and about what I now knew that it was really all about. It's about this. It's about taking from here and giving it out. And my favorite meditation is thinking in my head, when every breath you breathe in is taking from the world. You're taking it in. And every breath you breathe out, you're giving it back. And everything we do is that exchange of taking and giving and taking and giving. And the way that we live in our society right now, there's so much more taking than there is giving. And it's built that way. And it makes it really difficult to find any kind of balance. And it's all about take, have, keep. And that doesn't feel really good on the inside. But making all of this art, I made these artist books where I incorporated poetry and storytelling and talking about my mom and our relationship and everything that I had learned. I started doing these show and tell events. It was more than a poetry reading. And I was like, how can I kind of show these to people? And so I would invite people to come to my dorm room, or I'd invite people to meet at a coffee shop in small groups of 5 to 10 people at a time, and I would perform these books for people. And at the end, people would come up to me and they would cry. And they would say, I'm not the same person that I was before I saw that. I'm going to go change my major. I'm going to tell my parents that I'm gay. I'm going to play my guitar for somebody. I'm going to go travel the world because that's what I really want to do. And I realized that I made all that artwork to find a way for myself to come back to life. But I did not at all realize that sharing it with other people was going to be the thing that allows other people to come back to life, to restore their connection, to get plugged back in. And that's why my business is called Papercraft Miracles, because sharing art like that with people saved me when I literally had nothing. And just like that, the light came in. And my light came back out again. And, when you think about that Leonard Cohen line where he says, there's a crack in everything, and that's how the light gets in. That's also how the light gets out. I started being really intentional about the ways that I paid attention to the signs, how I listened to what people were saying when they weren't saying anything at all. And I found ways to get people to say things they didn't know how to say, to restore their connection to the world, to their community, to themselves. And I've been doing this kind of work in some capacity ever since. But the connection between my own creativity and curiosity, my sense of wonder, it wasn't really apparent to me until after my dad died just after Christmas in 2023. My dad was a science man through and through. He didn't believe in any afterlife or any spirituality, and it made his life much more difficult trying to avoid the obvious magic that surrounds all of us. And I knew that he was this world-famous scientist, but I didn't realize how much of myself came from him until he was gone. After his death, his brother, my uncle, conducted dozens of interviews with people who knew my dad throughout the course of his life, all in different capacities. And watching all of these strangers tell me about who they knew my dad to be was eye-opening, to say the least. Over and over, his colleagues and mentees from work talked about this endless, unstoppable curiosity, his confidence and lack of embarrassment surrounding it. He didn't see a hierarchy amongst people. Just because someone held a higher job title than he did, or was out of his league, that didn't faze him at all. And even though he was markedly the most brilliant man in just about every room he ever was in, it didn't go to his head. He would still ask an undergraduate student what they thought about a scientific problem, and he would genuinely listen in case they saw something he didn't. His curiosity led him to collaborate. His creativity led him to change the world. And even though he didn't see any of that as being connected to the energy of the world like I do, I believe he was receiving downloads from the universe all that time, and he never knew it. His first principle in life was that it's so hard to do anything, you might as well do something important. And now I see how his work ethic, his leadership style, and his curiosity have secretly been shaping me all my life. The way the universe was guiding him through his research, unbeknownst to him. Maybe it's not just about doing it because we can, like my mom said. And it's not just about doing something important because everything is so hard. I think it's about doing something important because we can. It's about opening people up to the possibilities that they secretly are able to do something important. It's about finding a new cup to hold the overflow that we must all collect like rainwater. It's about finding the things that make energy rain for you, because it really is tremendous. It really is. Thank you.